Do you think, Robert, that what is happening in India is in some way a pioneering effort in the sense that we've seen the pushback start in places where the Islamic population grows to about 15%, 20%. And we've seen also that in places like Assam and Bengal, where the population of Muslims was something like in Assam it was 35%, and in Bengal it was close to 30%. And in the elections, these people were wiped out. The parties who were anchoring for the Muslims, they were wiped out. And not just wiped out, after that, the reversal of those Muslim favoring laws happened at such staggering pace that even we, the die-hard anti-Islamist people, even we have been taken aback whether that could happen. In fact, today, sorry, I mean, um, today I can say that there have been more mosques demolished in India in the past 6 months or so than it has happened in Europe in the past 60 years.
Hmm. No mosques have been.
Just the other day, one big mosque was abolished, or as they say, martyred in Jaipur. Another one in Bombay. These are the places you could never think of those kind of things happening. 10
Yes,
years back, you couldn't think of it.
and there are no mosques. It's not happening anywhere else in the world. No mosques are being demolished in Europe. On the contrary, churches are regularly being burned in Europe under mysterious circumstances where the perpetrators are not apprehended or it's treated like an isolated incident. And yet, hundreds of churches have been torched over the last few years in various European countries, and mosques are being built all over. Also, churches that are abandoned are being turned into mosques. And this is, of course, all part of the Islamization scheme. The mosques in India were built on the sites of demolished Hindu temples precisely in order to show the victory and superiority of Islam over Hinduism. And it's the same thing in Europe, that the churches are made into mosques or churches are burned and mosques are built in order to show the victory of Islam over Christianity and the superiority of Islam over Christianity. And so India, in pushing back against that and demolishing the mosques, is doing something that's unprecedented practically in the history of Islam. This has not been done virtually anywhere. You have a couple of incidents. Of course, the Cordoba Cathedral in Spain is a former mosque, and there are some others, I'm sure, somewhere, but it's practically unheard of. And people will say when they hear this, oh, you see, Spencer and Sanjay and Vibhuti, they're terrible racists and bigots because they are saying that mosques should be demolished. And Europeans and Americans would recoil at that because they assume
Uh,
without
uh,
evidence. I'm sorry, I'll just finish this point and then I'll give way. They assume without evidence that a mosque is simply a benign house of worship and anybody who's against it must be a bigot. Whereas we know from history, from Islamic theology, and from the record of mosques all over the world that they are centers for the conquest and Islamization of the surrounding area, that weapons are stored in them, and so on. And so to demolish a mosque is to try to defend the native culture and integrity of the identity of the people in whatever land this is happening. And it's great courage being shown on the part of Indian authorities to dare to do it in the face of all this propaganda that makes it sound as if some harmless animal is being killed or something of that kind, that some gratuitous act of aggression is being committed when really this is a defensive action against an aggressive and intolerant movement.
so, would you consider the Ram Janmabhoomi an inflection point?
Yes, very much so. Yes, that right now, if Europe were to understand the gravity of the threat it faces, which it should understand, since it understood it very well for 1,000 years of jihad and resisted and fought against the invading Islamic jihadis and drove them out of France and drove them out of Spain and faced them down at Vienna and ultimately drove them out of that whole area of Eastern Europe as well. I mean, there are Muslim areas in Albania and so on, but the entire Islamization of Eastern Europe was stopped and much of it was reversed. If they understood now that they're facing that same enemy, that ancient enemy that has always wanted to destroy them and has never changed or shifted one bit from that imperative, then they could stand up and defeat this threat now. It still could happen. But if they continue to pretend that any opposition to Islam is just bigotry and racism, and that the people who are calling for that resistance are the problem, then they're doomed. And then we'll see an Islamic Europe fairly soon.
And I'm very, very glad about your laudatory statement about the courage of the government of India and the machinery and administration to uproot, demolish the illegal structures of mosques that have been sprung upon a Hindu temple or an encroached land. This is a very important distinction to make before the Western leftist Islamist media begins to harp that, hey, freedom is gone, like a religious intolerance in India. That needs to be
You're right.
all the time. Yes.
These two mosques that I talked about,
Yes.
they were encroachments.
Encroachments. That's right. So they make their dargah, they make their places of so-called places.
And sorry to interrupt. They, along with the Noorani mosque that was martyred, one mazar was also abolished.
Mazar. Yeah, that's right. Now the mazar and madrasas needs to go too. But here is a very
hundreds of madrasas have been closed down in UP by Yogi Adityanath.
Yes. So coming to that, Robert, I'm going to ask you a question. That Islam is spreading with remarkable gay abandon in Europe and America.
Yes.
I use the word the gay abandon with which they are going around, opening mosques. And, as you say, what befuddles me is how they are systematically and deliberately using freedom as the fault line of democracy. So Texas, Florida, they are attacking the bastions of Republican Party and making an encroachment, if I may use the word, that I'm creating my own ghetto where Sharia law will apply, but not the American laws will apply. This surreptitious way, the way they are spreading, the way the mullahs are talking, that we are here to conquer America. America doesn't belong to Christians, it belongs to Islam. That's virtually going on, and I repeat, with absolutely gay abandon. And the rest of the crowd is just listening to it.
Mm-hmm. I hope only your abandon is gay, because otherwise Islam will not forgive you.
Well, I'm already a bigot, sir, not forgiven. So hey, what the hell? I'm using this word is also unfortunately had a wonderful connotation at one time.
Yes,
rainbow also has got a different connotation. So nothing against.
Yes, I don't approve. I don't approve of the appropriation of the word, and I'm sorry it happened because it was a good word, and we don't have an equivalent for that kind of. We don't have an equivalent word that means the same thing. A kind of carefree happiness.
Yes.
And so on. But in any case, the controversy in the United States over Sharia is going on false pretenses. Just this morning, I read a story from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, the newspaper in Fort Worth, Texas. And it was criticized. It was explaining how Muslims have to put up with so much Islamophobia and how terrible it is and how terrible the Republican Party is for pursuing anti-Sharia initiatives. And all Sharia is religious law for Muslims. And this is what people in Texas are being told. And this is what people all over the country are being told. And this is the problem. that they are being lied to about what Sharia really is. If they wanted to know, and any even half-educated person should know, if you want to know what Sharia is, go read manuals of Islamic law, which are readily available. Or if you don't wish to read that, look at Iran or Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan or Pakistan and see what Sharia is when it's applied. And you see in every case that you get an oppressive regime that denies the freedom of speech, denies the equality of rights of non-Muslims, denies the equality of rights of women, institutes all manner of abuses. And so what's to like about Sharia? And why should we not oppose it when it is an oppressive, supremacist, expansionist, violent political system? But the people in the United States, and I'm sure this is true in Europe as well, are being systematically and deliberately lied to and told that Sharia is benign religious law that will cause them no harm and has nothing to do with them, really. And so anybody who opposes it is just a terrible, hate-filled bigot. And so the people in Fort Worth, they read this in their newspaper and they think, oh, the problem is people like Spencer who oppose Sharia, not Sharia. Sharia is great. And this is how they are making their great gains all around the United States, by simply lying to people about what Sharia is really all about.
They're lying through their nose. What is sad is that the media is completely captured by the communist and Islamist variety of writers, and they are paid well. They are paid well to spew the venom, as the saying goes.
Yes.
You don't ever get to know the truth. You read what others are telling you to read. Fortunately, and thanks to YouTube and media technology driven spread of media that has happened, even there the algorithm is played. You must have heard about a few days ago how a Pakistani guy was making a complete plan to dehumanize the entire H-1B practices of hiring in the US as a fraudulent activity by the Indian IT guys. So there is an algorithm management of that going on. There's a Pakistani guy who did that. So these people have understood the game. That's the important part to understand. Whereas we are assuming they are playing a different game, they are not. They are playing our game, defeating us in our own play. Freedom as the fulcrum of democracy.
Yeah, you mentioned that a minute ago, and that was a very important point, that the left is all on board with Sharia in the West, and nobody on the other side, the right or conservatives or whatever you want to call them, seems to have any idea of how to deal with this. And so I testified before Congress in February about Sharia and explained why it was a threat. And all the Democrat congressmen who were present said what I was just explaining about the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, that Sharia is just private religious law, so why is anybody upset about it? And the pushback from the other side was very slight. And this is the problem, that the Republicans, for the most part, don't know any more about this than the Democrats. And those that do are condemned as Islamophobes in the media. So it's very hard to get the word out that this is actually a political system that endangers those who are not adherents to it.